Yes, I think we are streaming now. I think we're good.
Terrific. Well, that was easy.
I really don't know what that API is. I really don't get it. I mean, right. I'm not very proficient in this stuff anyway. But
well, we have kind of an important show with an important guest. So we're already 15 minutes behind. He was supposed to come on already. So
and you're supposed to edit this afterwards. Lucky you. But anyway, we are here. Better late than never. Of course, this is the Smoker Show. Sorry for the technical delay. We're about 15 minutes in, so we're not going to waste much time. We do have a huge announcement to make, and that is, of course, welcoming our two newest sponsors alongside with 𝗜𝗡𝗡. We now have Joytech, another hardware manufacturer that has been making products, starter products for smokers, alongside experienced equipment as well, too. And an OG, Phil, an OG, the
yes,
5 Ponds e-liquid vapor company out of California. You go back a long way with these guys.
Yeah, hold on. I'm right into Mooch.
Oh, good, great. Great. Now we got rolling, and now you're ruining my shot. Jeez,
running late. Okay, we're good.
so anyway, yeah. So I was talking about
5 Ponds.
Joytech, and then of course we got 5 Ponds.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. You know, I mean, Joytech is a massive manufacturer, a big player in the industry. And they still put out a lot of starting devices, right? So I think it's a good match for the show. And 5 Ponds has been around for a long time. I've talked with those guys so many times, and they seem to have their head in the right place when it comes to vaping. So I'm totally jazzed to have both of them as sponsors on the Smoker Show.
Very exciting.
Yeah, and we are going to start. By the way, the next Smoker Show in a couple of weeks. Doing some giveaways. We're going to be giving away products from our sponsors. As always, we're going to be looking for smokers to give those products to. So please continue to watch the show and get smokers to watch the show as well. We're going to have a lot of product to give away.
Yeah, I think that the best way to handle this is we do have a lot of vapors that are watching the show as well too. We'd like to give a gift or giveaway, if you want to call it that. You know, there'll be a small nominal fee per FDA, but give a giveaway to a vapor and also give a giveaway to a smoker. That way, if you're a vapor and you pick up a new kit, thankfully, thanks to 𝗜𝗡𝗡 and Joytech, we have a lot of kits to give away. And if you're a vapor, maybe you can give it to a smoker, and then you can bring them back. The whole goal of that is to bring them back and get live feedback from them. Like, what happened? You picked up the device with liquid, and how did it work for you, and what challenges did you face, and so forth. So I think that's the way we're going to handle it. We're going to start on the next episode once we get all our ducks. I mean, obviously, I don't even know how to broadcast, so I guess that we should start there before doing giveaways. But
this will get smoother and smoother as we go. I promise.
I promise.
Dimitri has some brand new software that he's working through, so we're going to get there. It's going to continue to look and flow a whole lot better. Okay, so please bear with us.
Ironically, I got the new software, and I said to myself, well, let me get to learn it a little bit more before I use it on the show so nothing breaks, and the software that I do know did break. But as always, like we do here, we got, of course, a little recap action before we bring on our guest. And just a couple of things to talk about before we get started. Thank you for spending your Tuesday night here with us at the Smoker Show. Me and Phil certainly appreciate it, and so do our sponsors. So, Phil.
Absolutely. All right, so here we go. What is vaping? And you see that. It's covered in all episodes. It will be. It is in the context of this show, it is the act of using an EVP, that's what we're calling them here, e-liquid vaping product. And that e-liquid may or may not contain nicotine. So it's basically using your PV. That's what we're doing. That's what vaping is. Vaping is safe, right or wrong? And I want to do a little rant here a little bit too, if you guys don't mind. Although most studies conclude that vaping is far safer than smoking, we strongly recommend that if you do neither, continue to do neither. Right? So smoking, that equals bad. Reducing cigarettes through vaping, that equals good. Eliminating cigarettes through vaping, that equals better. Not smoking and not vaping, that equals best. And if you see negative articles about vaping, always question whether that article or that broadcast or whatever you're watching, if they compare that negativity to that of a traditional combustible tobacco cigarette. Because if it doesn't, in our opinions, it is invalid. So here's the rant, okay? we have been saying for a long time, that vaping is harm reduction and not harm elimination. So when we see these studies come out, the studies about metals, okay, in the vapor, and we see there's probably going to be a whole lot of issues tomorrow because yeah, is that going on the air tonight, Demi?
Yeah, NBC Nightly News tonight just buried us.
Yeah, okay. So, you know, if you have concerns, it goes back to the days of, remember when I used rayon and I said, you know, hey, look, if you have concerns with rayon, don't use rayon, right? If you have concerns with vaping, you know, here's a show that is dedicated to getting traditional tobacco cigarette smokers off of that and onto vaping. But I'm saying to you right now is that if you have an issue with vaping, if you have concerns about vaping, don't vape. Don't vape. I don't want you to smoke either, okay? But don't vape. We are not medical doctors. You know, we've looked at the facts, we've looked at studies, we've read studies, and we truly believe in our heart of hearts that vaping is safer for you than traditional tobacco cigarettes. I think most of us will agree, but there are still a lot of unknowns. So when you see a study like that about the metals, okay, and if you have concerns, well, maybe you should think about what you're doing, right? If you're vaping 50 mils a day, and your coil head, if you look inside of there, there's like 7 coils inside that coil head with a whole lot more metal. Well, maybe you should think about eliminating that from your life. Maybe you should think about reducing that a little bit. And that's not going to be a popular opinion. That's going to be a very, you know, especially with the vaping community, it's going to be a very negative opinion. But I'm going to tell you how I feel about this stuff. It's the exposure. It's the exposure. If you expose yourself to less, it's potentially less bad for you, right? Would you agree with that, Demi?
I absolutely agree. It's all, again, you know, a calculation of the risk based on what we know scientifically right now. I do have to say that obviously we're waiting on Dr. F's rebuttal for what came out today, which talks about carcinogenic substances that they found in plasma that they did on teens and you know, just BS. But I do want to bring up a point for those of you that are really messaging me because I'm getting tons of messages on this thing. Okay?
Go back to your camera, buddy.
Yeah, I will. Okay. I am going to go actually into this cam here because I want people to see this. This is the study that was published today that it's making the rounds. Of course, adolescent exposure to toxic, volatile organic chemicals. They make it sound so, you know, so dangerous and so such fear-mongering propaganda. But you'll see here in the methodology that even within the methodology, it says that people naturally have these volatile compounds in their system. We have it already in our system based on what we drink and we eat and so forth and so forth. It's, again, the dosage, not the poison. But if you want a very quick rebuttal, and this is just for you guys out there that are vapors that are getting hammered by this, this is the one thing that you should see right here. Okay? Just pick this out of this entire study. So the guy that's lead on this study is a consultant to several pharmaceutical companies that market medications to aid smoking cessation. So the guy that is the lead on this study sells gums and patches, right? Or, well, he doesn't sell. He's a consultant. Also, Doctors Ramo and Rubenstein have consulted for Carrot Inc., which makes a tobacco cessation device. So these are the people that wrote this study. So take everything with a grain of salt, obviously. So if you want a very quick rebuttal, there you go. Boom. You just copy and paste that. The other thing that I want to bring up, Phil, I hit the wrong button again. See,
it's
okay. I got too many cameras. The other thing that I want to feel is you had your first experience with talking to a hearing about banning vaping.
I did. I broke my cherry when it comes to that. You know, I got a call from Nick Orlando. Nick gave me a lot of heads up on this. He called me about 10 minutes before, and he's like, "Why don't you?" So I go down there, and I wasn't going to talk. I just went there to support them and to kind of root them on. But they asked me, like, what would you say if you got up in front of the council? What would you say? And I'm like, all right, let me think real quick. And I said, well, you know what? This is what I would say. They're like, you got to sign up to talk. You got to sign up to talk. And I did. And I tell you what, when I went up there, my heart was like, boom, 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 boom. It was like really, you know, because I've never done anything like that before. Yeah. You know, I can talk to you in YouTube and talk to thousands of people in YouTube. I can go up on stage at a vaping event and talk to a whole bunch of vapors, but that's like completely out of my character and my comfort zone to do something like that. But I did it. I spoke from the heart, and I got their attention. They, because those meetings are really funny because they really don't pay attention to a lot of the people that are talking, right? I mean, they're fumbling around with their phones, they're looking down, they're looking all over the place. But I tried to grab their attention, and I think I held it. They were all looking at me, and they said I did a good job. So I'm kind of proud of that.
You did a good job. As somebody that's done this for 4 or 5 years now, actually, I was in Nashville too this week. For testifying against a bill here for exactly the same thing, including vapor into the smoking definition.
Right.
And as somebody that's done it very, very many times, I mean, at the end of the day, these are just humans. They're just people like us. And I got to say one thing, buddy. For last minute, your hair looked on point. So I just want to play this little piece. It's just a very, very short clip. It's just a minute long. Here's Phil down in Florida fighting for your rights.
And I'm a brand new Cape Coral resident. It is absolutely beautiful here, and I'm very excited to be part of the community. I'm also a mature, adult, professional, and educated electronic cigarette user. Since 2009, I feel terrific. As a matter of fact, before I started vaping, I was very susceptible to upper respiratory tract infections. Since I've been vaping, I haven't had a single one. Okay? I'm against Prop 65 for this reason, because it sends a very dangerous message. And that message is that this, vaping, is just as dangerous as this, smoking. And it simply is not. And sending that message can be very dangerous for the people who might want to try this, whose lives could be improved, whose lives could be extended, and whose lives could be potentially saved by this product. Please don't send that message. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, I think you did a fantastic job, Phil, by the way. I mean, it was exactly the message that we should be sending at this. We don't want to give the same, we don't want to give people the idea that equating vaping with smoking is okay,
right,
because they're not going to get a chance to try it. I want to give you a little pointer that I use in my phone, and this is for other people that might run into this situation as well too. In my phone, I have a slide here from the American Cancer Society, which reads, "If a smoker who wants to quit chooses to try e-cigarettes to see if they will help, we support that effort." And
Perfect.
This is a very easy tool. You just put out your phone, you show it to the counselor that you're talking about, and the only thing that you should say is, there is no way that vaping is just as harmful as cigarettes. It's scientifically proven at this point that even the American Cancer Society is saying it.
Right.
So, since we know scientifically that it is less harmful, then it shouldn't be lumped in with smoking, and obviously sending that wrong message to all the people that are going to die smoking. So
absolutely. So it was a good experience, and maybe I'll do more of that and get more comfortable with that.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, so let's just skip the slides and get to the meat here. Let's bypass how it works. We'll cover that in the next show, because we're gonna have a very different show the next show. But let's roll some of those clips. Can we show some of those clips there?
Yeah.
Demi?
So what we were talking about today is batteries, obviously, and
yes,
a very, very hot topic in my opinion this year. The FDA not only is going to go after flavors, but I think they're going to go after this battery issue as well too. And that's why we've got our special guest on. But before we get that, I just want to show you a few things that could possibly go wrong with your batteries. So this is a little clip that Phil put together with us. Let me see if I can start it here from the beginning. And I can.
Yeah, so these are a bunch of clips that I found online. There's no sound with any of these clips.
Thank God.
Yeah.
They're really scary, really scary. This guy's taking a vape in the bus, by the way. Did you notice that? Just blew a little cloud, and then he vented.
Yep. Karma.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah. That's the one that we played in China as well, too.
You showed that one in China, yeah.
Mm-hmm. This one was scary. This one did look like a firecracker just went off in his pants. I mean, that one was really, really scary. And another one in the purse here.
Yep.
I mean, with all the tension with the terrorism that's going on and all these shootings and all that, that's got to be scary for anybody that's in that vicinity, too. You know?
My God, absolutely. This is the one that bothers me the most.
Yeah, this is an enclosed battery. This is a smoke stick, from what I understand, right?
Yeah. So, how do we prevent that? How do we stop that from happening?
Well, there's only one person that we could be asking that question to, right?
Absolutely. Mr. Mooch, there he is.
Good
What's up,
evening.
guys?
Good evening, Mooch. Of course, thank you for taking the time to join us here on the Smoker Show, one of our most anticipated guests. And by the way, the telephone lines will be open, 215-383-5752, and we will be taking your questions later on. Anything that you have vapor-related, but hopefully mostly battery-related. Before we get into the specifics of batteries, Mooch, how did you get into wanting to research and put in so much effort into battery safety?
Well, I owed Phil. I mean, he asked me directly. The favors that I owed Phil.
Yeah.
The jaw locks up. You get tired. Sometimes you just can't fulfill a person's needs. So I needed an alternative. And what happened was I started vaping almost 3 years ago, and I've been designing power management electronics, which includes battery chargers and battery management and protection systems since the early 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a little bit of some battery knowledge. And I saw, as I started vaping, and I had particularly janky boxes from a couple of friends of mine who turned me into vaping. The ratings on the batteries back then was E-Fest.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just angry as hell, like really angry at double the price for obviously preposterous current ratings and overrated capacities. And I had the equipment to do a lot of battery testing already, which I'd done for my clients. So I started testing them, and it kind of snowballed, getting more and more equipment, setting up a new dedicated test station here. And most of it is just to say, this community helped me get off smoking, which I've been doing as sort of a stress smoker for 30 years, in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I did it slowly. It's the kind of thing where I felt, for me, I could have done it in a couple of days. It was just a way of paying back. And so it comes out of anger. It comes out of some kind of, hey, well, who do companies think you are, lying to a bunch of people who are trying to make their lives better? And some of it is just the technical interest also in what's going on and why is it happening. And but I think a lot of it, certainly at the beginning, came out of anger.
You have to have some kind of a electrical engineering sickness to be able to put up with a lot of this stuff to get there. And obviously this show is geared towards smokers, new people that are coming in. But I think that the goal, I think, for me and Phil is mostly to raise awareness. These cells that we use, I think the big misconception that a lot of smokers have, because of the headlines that we see on the newspaper and on media and TV, is e-cigs are exploding, right? Which is probably the biggest fake news, I think, in today's media. So I think that the fear, and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, that a smoker will have is like, man, if I'm going to pick up this thing, yeah, cigarettes will smoke me, it will kill me, but this vaping product can blow my face up.
Right. Right.
There's an important distinction, I think, to be made, too. People would say, e-cigarettes are exploding. It's the batteries that are exploding. Right. And I think it's important to note that, in my opinion, from what I've seen, the vast majority of any incidents, which are tiny compared to the millions of times people vape every day, that most of the incidents are caused by what we might call user error, or something that was preventable, not a device just exploding. The one exception is that smoke that was on that ledge at the end of the presentation that just went up during charging. And I actually have a dozen units here, and one of the burnt out ones that I'm looking into. But all the rest of them are, the one fellow who danced out the door while his pants were on fire, that was a battery in a pocket with loose change. Mm-hmm. That's going to cause a short circuit, and that's going to cause the battery to overheat and possibly explode. And some of them do it quite violently. And so many of the incidents we see, which are a tiny, tiny fraction of what's going on out there in terms of people vaping very safely every day for years and years, only a tiny number of them turn into something where there's a problem. And 90% of those, if not 99.99%, are preventable. But it makes great news to say e-cigs explode and show that video.
So before we get into the slides, you said 99.9% of them are preventable. So how do we do that? I mean, I know the answer, but you take it.
Yeah, well, some of this is covered in the slides. A lot of it's just basic understanding and respecting the power that's in these batteries. They are not, like I'm kind of going into the slides here. It's don't use so, you know, if you get my drift.
Yes, we got your drift. We're gonna go on start to the slides. You want to start the slides, Phil?
Yeah, it's so much of it is just through certain just being careful and respecting the power that these have, and that question actually is directly answered in the slides. So I don't know if you want me to.
Yeah, I think we should start doing the slides. I do want to remind the people that are. I know there's a bunch of people that want to ask you questions. Please wait towards the end of the episode to be able to, so we kind of get on track here and try to keep everything that Mooch has prepared for us here. But of course, here, Phil, this is some of your expertise as well too. I mean, you know, it's terminology. If you thought that, you know, we did on the first couple of episodes a terminology on e-cigs and vaping. If you thought that was confusing, it gets a little bit more confusing when you start diving into the pieces.
And don't forget, we hopefully Mooch will allow us to publish these slides along with the next show.
Yeah, certainly. And I want to apologize for my background too. I was actually going to film my first video, Battery Basics for Vapors today, but
Fantastic.
didn't get a chance. So I just threw an empty board up in front of it. So sorry for the confusing background. But
Terrific.
I took a few of the terms, particularly for new vapors, they might see in their posts or that they might see in other videos, even in my videos, and they'll just be going, what? Because these are the ones that confused me. Some of them confused me, particularly like using the word stacked for series. I'm like, just call it series. And I can't see your screen or what we have up in the live broadcast. So if you could just let me know which when the slide goes up and which number it is.
This is slide number 1 of 7, and I think if you look in your preview here in VC, you'll be able to see it as well too. But slide number 1 terminology.
Remember, I've got my duct tape and tablet thing. So
I'm sorry, I forgot.
The screen is facing away from me, so I can't see. I can't see anything until I duct tape a mirror to show me the reflection of my duct tape tablet.
Now that would be Greek engineering.
Duct tape to a ladder. One of these days, I'll afford a $30 light stand and some way to clamp the tablet.
You got it.
Okay, so basically, sometimes you'll see, and I'll try to make these like 1 minute each or less.
Sure.
You'll see numbers: 18650, 26650, 2700. Those are the sizes of the batteries, and some devices now will take more than one size. Others will only take a particular size. You want to be careful. What the code is for these batteries, the size of the battery itself is encoded in the name of it. So 18650 will be, the first two numbers are the diameter, 18. The next two numbers are the length, 65. This is a millimeter, so it's 18 millimeter diameter, 65 millimeters long, and the 0 at the end means round. So a 26650 is 26 millimeter diameter, 65 millimeters long. Now, most devices will say what size they need, but for those who want to know what's going on, what the differences are in sizes, it's right there in the name. You can code this, figure out the size of the battery.
And just to give a little visual, while I have a battery sitting up, and again, this show is directed to a lot of the new people. So what we're talking about is 18 is the dimension this way, and of course 65 the battery this way, and 0 that the battery is round. Just a little 26650, the same thing. Okay, and there's how round it is, and then how tall it is, and what the dimension is. Just a little visual action there.
No, thank you. The next one, board and chip. You'll see these used interchangeably. The engineering side, we'll call it a board or a circuit board. The popular term now is a chip, even though these boards have chips. Essentially, it's a circuit board that's in a regulated device. It's used. That's where your display is. That's what the buttons are usually connected to, and that's what's used to set the power and control your device. But you'll see it called a board or a circuit board, or the popular term for it is chip, even though there are multiple chips on the board. You'll often see with batteries ratings, which are particularly important, we'll go into later, two acronyms, CDR and CDC. CDR, Continuous Discharge Rating, and CDC, Continuous Discharge Current Rating. And these are essentially the manufacturers, hopefully, rating for the battery. It's a good point for safety and long life of the battery, not to go beyond it, but it's the important one for us because pulse ratings are useless, which we'll go into later. Something you'll hear about a particular type of regulated devices, people throw out terms like DNA device or DNA board, and it has nothing to do with genetics, but a company called 𝗜𝗡𝗡 has a very popular and very good line of boards, regulator boards that go in a regulated device, that they call DNA boards, from 60 watt up to 250 watt, which actually I think can do 400 watt outside the US. But they'll call that a DNA board or a DNA chip. You'll also see on some batteries, and you also see written acronyms IMR, INR, and ICR. These are properly called chemistries, but they're not chemistries at all. They're actually manufactured model number prefixes for batteries, which are often associated with certain chemistries, but sometimes more than one. And I actually have a video in my Minding Your Ma series on my Battery Mooch YouTube channel that goes into this in depth. But you don't have to worry about these. There are only a couple minor variations in chemistry, as long as you're not getting the chemistry that's in a LiPo, which you wouldn't buy anyway in a round cell. So you really just don't have to worry about chemistries.
And I do want to remind people here, I'm just going to bring up your YouTube channel. You can just like I did over here, just put Battery Mooch in your YouTube search channel, the first channel that pops up. Very nice logo, by the way, Mooch. And you can see the episodes that he has uploaded. And it's nice to know that the next video that you're going to see going up will be geared towards beginners, so you can find all his information here. And also I saw a really good comment in the chat briefly that I want to mention because I think this is fantastic. This is an existing vapor that is here watching the show that's been vaping for 2 years, and he's always used the built-in battery. So now he wants to move on, and that's why he's here at the show to learn more about batteries. So that's really great to hear, Louis. So thank you so much for hanging out. And this is another way of how vapors can benefit from the Smoker Show.
And also, you know, the show's ideal for that, for new vapors and transitioners, and there'll be other things out there. It's actually what I'll be, not concentrating, it'll be for both, but for transitioning vapors going from regulated to non-regulated, or the other way. The, you know, Battery Basics for Vapors things series I'm starting in my YouTube channel isn't just for new vapors, it's also people who are just new to a certain aspect of vaping.
Fantastic.
And let's see if I can get this screen to come back. Come on back to me.
This is one of the most popular terms you're going to hear in vaping, right?
Yeah, and MAH, M-A-H, acronym for milliampere hours, or some people say milliamp hours. This is essentially the size of the gas tank of a battery. It's quote, capacity. And if the battery, for the industry, if the battery is run very, very, very low current level, this is how many milliamps it can provide for how many hours. Now, as soon as you start running the battery hard or using it in real-world situations, that's out the window. But it allows you to compare, essentially, basically, the running time of the battery. So a 3,000 milliampere hour battery, or mAh battery, will run longer, typically, than, let's say, a 2,000 mAh battery. Beyond that, we really can't use it for much, but it is handy to sort things out if you're confronted with a big list of batteries. You know, find the one with the current ratings that are high enough, and then go for the one with the highest mAh, typically, and you'll end up with a good battery.
Fantastic.
Marriage is a term that that's just kind of tossed around, and there's a lot of myths and stuff going with it. Battery marriage is a way of vaping, choosing and using batteries where you buy the batteries together and you always keep them together as a set. Let's say you have a 2-battery mod, 2-battery device, or a 3-battery device. Buy 2 or 3 batteries for it, preferably 2 sets of 2, 2 sets of 3, so you can rotate between them. You're not waiting for them to charge. And if you buy them together, use them together in that device, or use them together, excuse me. You can use them in any device, but don't split them up, don't put them together. There are a few not very common instances where splitting the batteries up and using them for different things, like in a flashlight, and then putting it back together, that can run into some problems. Certainly performance problems with the mod. Very, very rarely increases the risk of the batteries misbehaving. That's rare. Most of it's about performance, and it's just a lot easier if you have a set. You can break up the set, a married set, at any time, but once they're together, they stay together. Let's see, the last one. This confuses a lot of people. You see a lot of batteries with the rewrapped batteries, which a third party will take like a Samsung or Sony battery, rip off the Samsung wrap, put their own wrap on it, but they'll put 3.6, 3.7 volt on it. That is not the charging voltage. That's not really the voltage of the battery. That is just the, quote, nominal voltage of the chemistry for that battery. It's a way of identifying the chemistry for the government, for regulatory purposes and things like that, where your alkalines are 1.5, your NiCads are 1.2, well, lithium ions are 3.6 or 3.7. We can ignore it. We don't do anything with it. You don't set your charger to it. You don't do anything with it. We charge at 4.2 volts. You can use it down to 2.5 volts, but most mods will turn off at 3.2 volts or something. So it's a useless, very confusing thing, but the rules and regulations say it has to be on there because it's part of the identification for the battery.
So, Phil, anything that that you as recommending to somebody that's new through this first slide that pops out to you, something that really should be the focus of somebody that's coming into this to try this product?
I would actually have to have the slide in front of me. I mean, milliamp hours is very important, but I think the CDR and the CDC are probably the most important on that that chart, and I'm sure Mooch is going to go into that more and why those two acronyms are so important.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, let me move on to the next slide, and this will be slide number 2, continuing on terminology.
Okay, and quickly then, you often hear pulse or pulse ratings. Number one, pulse ratings are useless. There's no standard for what a pulse is. Is it 1 second, 5 seconds, 1 minute between pulses, 5 seconds between pulses? So just ignore any kind of pulse, max pulse rating, completely useless. Essentially, a pulse is anything less than continuous firing of the battery all the way through, which we don't do when we vape, but because there is no standard for a pulse, we have to use the continuous ratings and how the battery performs continuously as the standard to judge a battery. And it also gives us a safety margin, because if a device ever fails or if the button gets stuck on a mechanical or unregulated device, what will happen is the battery gets discharged continuously. If we have a battery that can handle that, then we're not going to have to worry about it exploding or venting or something like that. So using pulse, the term is out there, but it's really pretty worthless for us unless you're just comparing how long of a draw or a pull you take from your device. Protected and unprotected batteries. A lot of people say, oh, I want a protected battery. That's what I'm going to buy. Two issues with that. Number one, protected batteries are longer. They add a circuit board and another contact onto the end of a standard 18650. So now it's like 70 millimeters long. It won't fit in most devices. Number two, a protected battery typically has a current rating, maybe 7 amps, but often as low as 5, 3, even 2 amps. It's unless you're a very low wattage vapor and you have a device that can handle a protected battery, namely a long one, we want unprotected batteries. Now that sounds like the most idiotic thing in the world, and that's a much bigger discussion because, yeah, there's some issues with that. But in order to work with our devices or to get a high enough current rating for vaping, you need what's called an unprotected battery. So don't buy any protected ones. Rewrap, you'll hear this term often. The plastic sleeve that's heat shrunk around a battery, all our lithium-ion batteries, is critical for safety. If it ever gets damaged, you need to rewrap your battery. Take off the old one, put a new one on. If you're not comfortable with doing that, the safety precautions you need to take. Don't wear rings, a whole bunch of other things. Bring it to a shop. Worst comes to worst, recycle the battery. Don't use something that has a torn wrap on it because it's critical for safety and a lot of different ways people are not aware of. There's also a little insulator ring up at the top.
I just want to give a little visual example again here. I've got these are all 18650 batteries for those of you that are new. And you can see each one of them has a different wrap. So even though this is exactly the same type of cell, they all have different ratings, as Mooch mentioned earlier. But I do want to show you just a little example here on my green Samsung. You can see the little plastic right there. Thanks to my clumsiness of putting it in the charger in and out, has been ripped. So I will not be using this battery until I actually take the plastic and I rewrap it. But you can see here on these other batteries that everything's intact. Top to bottom, everything's looking pretty good. So even though they have different colors on them, it's exactly the same type of battery.
And these, so rewrap is, and there's two terms. A rewrap, the noun will be a battery which is purchased by a third party, like eFest. They'll buy Samsung batteries, rip off the old wraps, and turn them into a rewrap. They'll rewrap them and turn them into rewraps by adding an eFest wrap on top of it. And this is all kinds of debate. Is this good? Is this bad? Etc. But a lot of the exaggerated ratings, all of the exaggerated ratings that happened with the rewrap batteries, these third-party batteries, non-Samsung, Sony, LG, Panasonic, or Sanyo. The top ring insulator, next term, that is the black, white, or different color where the wrap comes up over the top of the battery. There's a plastic disc that's critical for safety. If your wrap gets damaged, that insulator underneath there is what keeps your battery from short-circuiting and possibly exploding while you're putting it in and out of a device or the charger. This is why keeping the wraps intact is important, and where it helps to have a spare set of batteries too, because if your wrap on one set of batteries gets torn, you can use the spare set that normally you'd alternate between while you rewrap or bring them to a shop, wait for new wraps to arrive from www.batwrap.com or whatever way that you might want to get that wrap repaired or battery replaced. You'll hear the term thermal runaway, and we saw some videos of what that was. Thermal runaway is different from venting. Thermal runaway is a catastrophic destruction of the battery from these runaway exothermic heat-producing reactions, and this comes typically from a short circuit or what the battery thinks is a short circuit. It could be an ultra-low resistance build on a mech or ultra high power levels in other circumstances. It's bad, and you see what happens. Essentially, it turns into a model rocket engine. If it's inside of a tube mechanical device, you can turn it into a pipe bomb. So it's something you always want to avoid, and this is why avoiding short circuits is so important. If you're just overloading a battery, odds are it'll do what the next term is, and it's called vent. Underneath the top contact of the battery is a pre-scored disc, like the top of a Budweiser can, that will split open and release the excess gas and pressure that forms. The battery will get hotter and hotter and hotter, produce more and more gas, and just open up. Now, what it sprays out is toxic and hot as heck, but it'll be inside your mod. It smells terrible. You'll know when it vents. And just don't breathe it, don't touch it, clean everything out carefully, and recycle the battery. Tape over the end and recycle the battery. But those are two very different things. Venting itself is a simple mechanical process. Thermal runaway is a catastrophic, rocket engine kind of thing, or an explosion that we saw in the videos. And the last thing I covered before was the term wrap, and that refers to the heat-shrunk plastic sleeve that's so critical for safety around the battery.
And again, I'll just take a quick break here, Phil. I think that the wrapping is something that's way overlooked in this industry. I mean, I have seen some batteries, some pictures on Facebook that literally there's no wrapping left. I mean, and this is a very, very serious issue that I think a lot of vapors don't take lightly. And
this is let me jump in here, Dimi, because this is actually something that I talked to John about a while back. Some of the newer batteries, some of the newer cells have clear wrapping on them. And I am not a fan of that because it kind of gets you into the mindset of, well, that's what it's supposed to look like, right? That's, what if your clear wrap, develops some damage? You may not be able to see it as well as with a colored wrap, right? It's harder to see. So I really don't agree with that type of wrap at all.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't recommend it for a newer vapor. Certainly, as you get more experience, you can feel when the wrap is damaged. But just to have it all clear, I think there's some fantastic looking translucent wraps out there that can give you some of the effective clear, like EFES uses a translucent wrap where you can buy them. I love the blue translucent wraps. I get that silvery tone from underneath that looks so cool, but it's blue, so I can actually see when there's any wrap damage. But my mods are so I don't have any mods that really tear anything up. I didn't have any examples of damaged wraps to show. I have to rip and pull and tear for any time I want to demo that.
All right, moving on to the most important part, number 3 slide in your presentation here, and that is safety.
Let's see, I'll go to 3. Okay, I mentioned earlier, what's really important is these are not our parents' AA batteries. These things pack much more power, and you saw in the videos what can happen if you abuse that power. And a very important note for all of this is we take a risk every time we use these batteries. Now, it's what the community uses, but they are not meant to be used outside of a protected battery pack. They're not designed for it. They're not built for it. That's why they have thin wraps. That's why the two contacts, the plus and minus, are both up at the top there underneath the wrap and the top ring insulator. There's a serious injury if we misuse, a risk of a serious injury or property damage if we misuse and mishandle them. But that's not a reason to be afraid of them. This is no different than driving a car or using a power tool. You can hurt yourself and a lot of people with a car, and you can really hurt yourself with a power tool. So what do? You take the actions necessary to minimize the risks of driving that car. You maintain it well. You use it properly. For a power tool, you don't do silly things with it. It's no different. We just have to recognize batteries, lithium-ion batteries, belong in that same category, and we can do a lot to minimize the risks. Thousands and thousands of vapors every day. For years, with no incident with their batteries. It's the ones who misuse or mishandle them that appear in the videos, and the very, very, very rare where the device itself is faulty. Things to do. Batteries like really boring lives, and that's the best way to think. No heat, no cold, no vibration, no dropping the battery. If you accidentally drop it, I can't tell you, no one can tell you, oh, it's safe. There is no acceptable damage. There's no acceptable denting of the top contact of the sides anywhere. So we just have to take care of them. Keep the wrap and the insulator on top in perfect condition. That's how they get short-circuited, by the wrap being ripped and exposing it. That's the misuse. That's the mishandling. Again, never short-circuit them, because that's what can lead to that thermal runaway, the explosions, the rocket engine going off in your pocket. Never carry them. Always carry them in an insulated container. You can get little boxes, in silicone sleeves. Never put a lithium-ion battery in your pocket. Even if you say, oh, that's my battery pocket, I'll never put change or keys or something there. I believe one of those videos, what happened, the guy who was at the gas station counter and ended up leaving out the door to put out the fire, I believe he had a dedicated pocket for batteries, but just forgot, made a purchase, took the change, dropped the change into the pocket with the battery, and it short-circuited on the change. It's just those little things that we can do. I'll be going into much more detail in some videos for the Battery Basics for Vapors series as I go further into that. But most of it is just treat them gently. No heat, no cold. Don't leave them in your car out in the summer. If you leave them in the car out in the winter, bring them inside. Let them come up to temperature before you use them. Don't charge them, don't discharge them when they're hot or cold. Just let them come to room temperature, treat them gently, and you should be incident-free for years.
And let's give a chance to Mooch to take a vape and a breather and just hear a word from one of our sponsors. We'll be right back. And we're back, and of course, I got to mention, I'm getting a lot of great comments on the content and just having everything. I know this is going kind of quickly, but you could always, when you're watching this on replay, pause, go back, and re-listen to some of this stuff to make sure that you absorb it and you can pass on the right information. Because one of the issues that I believe, and Mooch and Phil, I'm sure that you agree, is that a lot of the misinformation actually happens from vapors passing it on to vapors.
Yeah.
And I think
there are a lot of myths and just false information.
Yeah, and I think that's very, very important that even us, the vapors, be able to share the information. Hey, listen, I'm not too shy, and I know Phil's not too shy to send you a message, or anybody that not know something on a particular item. Go ahead, Phil.
Absolutely. Mooch has been extremely helpful to me with a lot of questions, and I'm sure some of the questions were pretty basic for a guy like John. But he's been very helpful, and I'm sure he'll be willing to answer your questions as well. One of the things that you said before is just if you drop it, if you damage it, if your wrap is maybe damaged, don't be cheap, guys. Don't be cheap. Don't think that I'll just use it again, right? I'll get by with this battery for a little while long. Don't be cheap, okay? Go out and buy yourself some new cells. They're not that expensive, right?
Considering they last a year, 2 years, it literally is probably the least expensive thing we buy. And people go, oh, cotton's cheaper. And I'm like, not 2 years worth of cotton. So, it's for what it gives us, they're astoundingly inexpensive. No matter how broke you are, they're dirt cheap. And you just go to a little DIY juice or something for a month and, buy 10 sets of batteries and not have to do it for 2 years, a year if you're abusing them.
I usually, even though my cells are all in really good condition, even though I really don't put a lot of use on my cells, every few months I recycle them and I buy a new set from RTD Vapor. That's just what I do.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the next slide, and this will be number 4 of 7. And
this will be quick because I jumped ahead. Number one, I recommend a good external charger if you have a device that has a battery that you can take out. I don't recommend charging in the device. One in a million, that's an issue for some devices. Also, the USB connectors, they're really delicate. Some devices you can update the firmware for. Most new vapors won't do that. But you're dealing with this little tiny, very delicate connection. I'd say save that for traveling or something like that. Use an external charger, an EFS, a Nightcore, something. I don't have any recommendations I can make yet. But because of that, you can charge at the rate you want to, which is often faster. You can feel the temperature of the battery. The newer chargers now will tell you how many milliampere hours are going back in the battery. If you see that dropping off a lot, even though you're using the battery the same way each time, that's an indication your battery is starting to reach the end of its life. So there are all kinds of benefits there. If you do, any way that you charge, stick around while they're being charged. You saw that one video where the thing went off on the counter way in the back on the other side of the room. It's a 1 in a million chance, but the consequences for the 1 in a million chance, like airbags in a car, it's 1 in a million, but we still want them there. It's the same kind of thing with our devices. You can go to a Home Depot or Lowe's or something, get a 12-inch kitchen tile, put a little cork or cotton, put something in the bottom so it doesn't scratch up the counter, and put your mod on top of that or the charger on top of that, and you've got a non-flammable surface if everything else is wood or something like that. I mentioned never carry your battery loose. Always put it inside boxes which are free from a company like, actually a lot of the battery companies now, IMR Batteries, lithium-ion wholesale, will give you a little box that carries 2 18650s for free if you order a pair of them.
Yeah, the last company that I ordered, I just got some brown LGs inside of some 26650s. They sent me these little boxes in the package. I mean, it's standard practice now, and use them. That's why they send them to you. Use them.
Yeah. You just do not put them in a pocket with anything there. Very critical. Using using lithium-ion batteries can be really scary for a new vapor, and there's no reason, like using a power tool, using a car, if we're scared using it, that actually increases the risks. It's respect the power that they have, but understand that you're in control of it, you're doing what you have to do to minimize the risk, and you can enjoy all the benefits that way. So it's respect, not fear. And if all of this is just like, whoa, okay, I am not ready for this, you can always start with an internal battery device. Like your sponsor has some terrific ones.
Yeah.
And you'd say, okay, yes, I have a battery in there that could 1 in a billion, blow up while charging or something, but there's a better record for those, and not have to deal with choosing a battery and ratings and all that stuff because the battery is already matched to the device, and it gives you time where you're using this internal battery device and its internal charging capability to learn about external batteries and which device you might want to use, something like that.
And I think one of the things that me and Phil struggled with, and I don't want this to sound like a self-promotion, but we put a lot of thought behind choosing the Chroma to go with the Zenith tank for that reason, Mooch. Somebody that's going to get started, right, Phil? I mean, that was probably the most determining factor in matching those two pieces of equipment together.
Yeah, I mean, the Chroma's been out there for a while. It's got a really good track record. But I did want to ask Mooch a question here. So, you did mention that if your battery is removable, you do recommend taking it out and using an external charger, right? So that's going to raise some eyebrows for those folks who say, well, what about my mod that doesn't have a removable battery? Where's my safety factor if I can't charge it externally?
Well, that's a device which has got a battery that's been paired with the device. You don't have the option of removing it, so we really can't debate anything about its pluses or minuses. This is the way it is. That's a design choice that's been made.
Right.
If we have the option, I recommend moving it because it adds additional benefits. Don't look at it as, 0 point is an external battery device making internal battery devices a goddamn safety nightmare. No. Look at it as, hey, the starting point is an internal battery device. Okay, that's fine, but we get more benefits if we go up to an external battery device.
Right. So I mean, we do have to make the leap of faith with an internal battery device that it was spec'd properly, that the charging is done correctly. We're hoping for that, right?
And that's where checking around. Do the Google searches. If you're part of a Facebook group or something, ask around. Hey, I'm thinking of this. There are a lot of reports of failures. Almost any device might have one report because maybe somebody had, torn wraps and they torched their device. But if you don't see a ton of reports of that thing being a problem, odds are there's no problems. There's no issues. The community is good at getting the word out when something starts to act up.
Now, have you done any testing with devices that have removable batteries, but you feel very, very comfortable using their internal charger?
No, I haven't looked at that yet. Any of the DNA devices I'd have no problems with because they actually use the same charge management chip that I've used. A Texas Instruments. It's actually not charge management, but a balancing and monitoring chip. And then their software takes care of charge management.
Right.
And for that, and they've got a terrific reputation.
Sure. The
boards seem to be well engineered, et cetera, and so forth. But for any of the other devices, I haven't looked into it because by the time, typically, it takes a lot of time. It takes time away from battery testing. And several weeks later, it's often replaced by a new device. So about the time I'd finish the testing and go, oh, yeah, this one's okay, people go, well, we can't buy that anymore.
Yeah.
What's the use on it? So I haven't yet. I mean, the new test station will make things happen much faster with that. And there might be a subset of the testing where I can just kind of bang through for big faults, just set up 2 weeks worth of, hey, here's 20 different mods. Let's assembly line this and check heating and voltages and stuff like that. But often for something like charging, like what I'm doing with the SMOC sticks, we saw a SMOC X8 blow up on that person's counter. Mm-hmm. But I had 11 of them here, new out of the box, and they're all in perfect condition, charged beautifully, and behaved perfectly. I found nothing wrong.
Wow.
So it could be the kind of thing where, hey, one person had one bad day, and maybe QC didn't catch it, and 15 units came off that line out of the 45,000 that were done that week or something, and those are out there, and those are the ones that blew up. But all the rest of them are just fine.
Right.
So you have to test over months, multiple batches. You need to do audits of the assembly and quality control procedures of the company to identify weaknesses and how they would spot these kind of things. It's a huge process. And odds are, unless there's a real big problem, we're not going to catch these kind of issues. Now, if it's a design issue, that you can see in just one unit.
Yeah.
If it runs hot as hell, like the soda charger, I think it was the ethos soda charger, runs unbelievably hot.
Yes,
at one
it
end.
does.
So I just said, whoa. I got two of them here. They're both over the boiling point of water internally. Nothing will last long. Nothing's good about this. Just use them at half an amp or never use this thing at all. That's where it becomes obvious. But for anything less than that, it's not a lot you can often tell. I think it's worth doing, and it's one of the reasons why I have some of the equipment I do in my test station. I'll be doing a video about that to try to accelerate that and investigate some of these things with faster turnaround time.
Just a quick shout out to 𝗜𝗓𝗘𝗧𝗓, who is moderating our chat tonight, and also he is collecting the questions for me in a private chat as well too, so I don't have to scroll through the entire chat. Also, big shout out to the Vaping Advocate magazine, who is sponsoring our telephone lines. 215-383-5752. We're going to open them up here soon to get your questions. I do see a couple of people that are already waiting, so please be patient. We will get to them as soon as we can.
We'll blaze through the rest.
Absolutely. Here we go.
Let's move on to number 5.
Number 5.
Okay, ratings. We touched on this before. Two important ones: the continuous discharge rating, the CDR or CDC, and the capacity. Now, continuous discharge rating, CDR, that's essentially how hard you can run the battery but still maintain a decent safety level. It's expressed in amps, so you might see 20A, 20 amps, 20 amperes, or 10, or whatever the number is. We recommend never going over it as a new vapor. If you decide to go over it later, the batteries can survive, but they get stressed. You lose a lot of power in the battery. There are all kinds of reasons not to. Just try it out. Start at under the rating. The Samsung 25R, a great 20 amp battery. The Sony VTC5A, an astounding 25 amp battery, probably the best all-around battery in my opinion. And try it at 25 amps. Capacity, essentially how big the gas tank is. I spoke about this before. An indicator of how long the battery can run, and that's the one that has mAh or milliampere hours.
And that number, I think, is again something that you should match according to the way that you want to vape. I think that's something that's very, very important for people to understand as well too, right, Mooch?
You'll see. There's an inverse relationship between the two, and essentially it says you can't have both. You can't have a 30 amp battery at 3,000 mAh.
Correct.
If you want 3,000 mAh, you're going to get a 15 amp rating or something like that, a 20 amp rating.
Yeah.
If you want a 30 amp rating, well, you're only going to get like 1,500 mAh. It's to get a high current rating, we need thicker metal electrodes. Everything needs to be beefier to handle the current, to handle the heat. That takes up room in the battery. But if we want more capacity, we need more battery goop inside the battery. So in a can, an 18650 metal can, there's not room for all that extra metal and connections, beefier connections, and all the extra battery goop at the same time. So you can get one or the other. Now, there's some play in the middle there where you can get a nice selection of both. And that's where, in the middle, where all the confusion is, what's better, Samsung 25R or VTC 5A. But because they're all kind of in the middle, you're not paying a big price unless you're really looking in terms of, I picked the wrong battery, because they're all within a few percent of each other. It's for the people looking for that last bit of performance or that last bit of runtime and capacity where one over the other makes a difference. Pretty well you'll be driven, say, no, runtime's more important for you, or no, I need 30 amps. I'm running at 90 watts for one battery. I need a 30 amp battery. Well, too bad. You only get this. You deal with whatever capacity you get.
I think it's funny seeing a lot of people that maybe started with sub-ohm or has sub-ohm that came back to MTL. I'm sure, Phil, you get this a lot as well, too. People are like, oh, my God, I get so much battery life, because the lower watt, for lower wattage like me and Phil, for us, the most important part, obviously, is the battery capacity, where we can run a device maybe a couple days using the same atomizer in some cases. So back to the slides, and we're moving on to number 6.
Exaggerated ratings. Nah. Any battery that has a rating on it is a rewrapped battery. It's somebody else made it, and this company has put their name on it and put ratings on it. A huge percentage of those batteries have exaggerated ratings. Beware of them. It's a core of what I do. There's places you can check. You can ask around your favorite groups, whatever group you're in, and say, hey, what are the real ratings? The community has come so far in the past couple of years, to learning what bullshit is being thrust upon us by so many of these companies, and also through ignorance. And I don't mean that in any insulting way, but just a lot of these companies, they get batteries in the factory. The factory says they're 30 amp batteries, and the company goes, that's awesome, and they put 30 amps on it. They don't test them, or they don't understand what a rating actually is. A rating is not a capability. A rating, a 10 amp battery can be run at 30 amps, but that doesn't make it a 30 amp battery. If we're going to have any way of comparing one battery to the next, we need to have a consistent standard for what a rating is. That's what I strive for. That's what I do in all my tables. And that's what makes some of these other ratings just useless. So just have an open mind on that. A good way to avoid this is to buy Samsung, Sony, LG, or Panasonic / Sanyo batteries. And Panasonic and Sanyo now are one company for the battery stuff, at least. There are no ratings on the battery. The ratings are in the data sheets. So you're trusting a vendor. And that's critical because there are fake Samsung, Sony, LG, Panasonic batteries. Buy from a known, reliable vendor. Yeah, maybe you save 50 cents, $1 somewhere else. Who cares?
Right.
You don't know what the battery is, and you're going to have this battery for 2 years. You're not going to miss that money. Now, some people have had good luck on eBay and Amazon. A lot of people have not. But I have a couple recommended 3 vendors in the United States, ones that I trust and I've purchased, from the 3 of those, several hundred batteries in the past 3 years. So, and the other 2 in Europe. Unfortunately, I don't have any recommendations for Africa, Asia, or Australia and New Zealand.
I do want to mention this, and just briefly, Phil, the experience that we had in China, speaking to some vendors down there. We have to be really, really careful with these rewraps. There are factories, and there is a factory in China that makes batteries that basically you walk in and you say, I want a battery, and they ask you, how much do you want to spend? You say, you can buy a $1 battery, you can buy a $2 battery.
And what do you want the wrap to say?
And then we can put on the wrap, we can put anything you want. You can put Phil Busardo wears Skechers. We'll put anything that you want on a battery wrap. As just give us the price, and then you get the grade, right? The grade of battery that matches the price that you're going to sell. So it's very, very important to make sure that you get good batteries. It's the most important aspect, I think, from vape.
I have that story too, where somebody went to a battery factory and they were questioning the amp ratings on the batteries, and they said, "How are you getting those amp ratings?" And the response was, "Just tell us what you want us to put on the wrap, and we'll put it on the wrap for you."
Correct.
Which is frightening.
Correct. All right, moving along, and this will be the last slide in the presentation.
So real basics about choosing a battery. Luckily, 3 times the CDR is the wattage it can handle. I'm talking about regulated vapors now. If you're a mech user or non-regulated, well, you have to earn Ohm's law, and you have to learn it yourself. I do have videos to help with that. You can check my Minding My Ma series. There's thousands of resources for learning Ohm's law and becoming comfortable with that. But for regulated vapor, let's say you have a 20 amp, considering a 20 amp battery, 3 times that, 60 watts per battery. If you have a 2 battery mod, 60 watts per battery, 120 watts you can set that mod to. Now, you'll get 2 battery mods that can run at 220 watts. Maybe. Let's assume they can actually run at that. It's probably more like 150, but some of them do run at that. One little sweet spot, 0.157 coil, and it can hit 220 watts. Everything else, no, 150. But the batteries aren't capable of that for more than just a few pulls, and then no batteries rated that high. 90 watts is the highest. A 30 amp battery, 90 watts. Each battery, that's the highest you can go. There'll be 180 watts in a 2 battery mod. But that can give you an idea of what you need to look for in terms of the current rating for a battery. Once you have that, right now, at least for a regulated user just starting out, once you have the current rating you need, get that rating or higher, and then just go for the highest capacity. You'll find I have a recommended batteries table in my blog at ECF, the links at Facebook. It narrows it down to a couple, just a few choices that can help you pick, but you really can't go too wrong once you've got the highest capacity for the current rating you need. Again, I only buy the Samsung, Sony, LG, or Panasonic Sanyo batteries to start. Once you learn more about the batteries, who's got maybe good China-manufactured cells, the particular aspect of performance that you're looking for as you become a more advanced vapor, you can dive into that later. Right now, you just want to be comfortable with the batteries you have. And then at the end, I just have a few links and places where some stuff is and where I am.
And I'm put the slide up now if you guys want to pause and get all of John's information here. Here's his blog, his Facebook, his Reddit, his YouTube, and of course on Instagram, Battery Mooch. So really great information in a nutshell. I think we covered it actually pretty quick, Phil. And it's, again, it might seem overwhelming, and everything in vaping will seem overwhelming because it's not as simple as just lighting up a cigarette and inhaling. You have to really, educate yourself.
This all becomes, it's only something you have to learn once. And that's what's really good. You don't have to relearn about batteries. You don't have to relearn Ohm's law or relearn. You just buy one battery for the next 5 years, if it's Sony batteries. So it's not, we just have to go, oh, frack me, spend the 10 minutes and go, okay, it's done. I never have to do it again.
Right. And I think it's also important to point out for smokers, for people who are interested in getting into vaping, you don't have to learn any of it. You really don't. Right. Okay? Yeah, I mean,
especially with an internal battery device. It's all done for you in the device when you get it.
Right. Take it as far as you need to go. Be educated if you want to take it beyond something like this. But all of that information that you're seeing, all of those terms, okay, it's great to know, but it's only necessary depending on where you want to go with vaping. But something like this, okay, the Joytech Ego, AIO, Eco, that's a lot of little words there. But you don't need to learn any of that, okay?
I would just recommend for any of those, don't charge them in your bed under the covers or something like that. Just put them up on a countertop, something non-flammable surface when you plug them in and charge them, and just kind of be around. It's just a little background kind of safety thing in the back of your mind to say, hey, I don't trust this device completely, just 99% of it.
I think when we're talking about these devices, they actually charge really fast too. I think we're in the mindset like we leave our cell phone plugged in overnight. These batteries don't need to be plugged in overnight. They charge very, very quick.
Well, a lot of people they'll come home from work, they'll plug it in, and they won't do anything with it till they wake up in the morning.
Right.
And on that, and if you do that, well, okay, I'm not saying put the charger unit in the sink, but I'm saying don't leave it under the covers with you. Put it down on a granite countertop or get that kitchen towel, which is what I do my charging on. But stuff of mine catches fire because of the testing on things. And what I call a defensive mindset. When we're in our cars, we're looking around for something stupid somebody else might do. We're not just blindly driving along assuming everything's fine. It's just a little bit of a background mindset you need while you're vaping also. We don't have to be nervous about it. It doesn't have to preoccupy us. It's just these little tiny things we can do to help make sure we have incident-free vaping for years.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, John, because I'm sure this is a question on a lot of people's minds. So, you talked about an external charger, and you talked about how an external charger, you can choose the charge rate of your battery, 0.5, 1 amp, 2 amps. And now we have a lot of devices that are coming out with rapid charge, okay? 2 amps up to 3 amps I've seen. What are your feelings on rapidly charging these batteries, and what's your rule of thumb for that?
Typically, I say any battery 15 amps or over, 1 amp is a non-concern. I have a charging rates table in my blog at ECF that, hey, I forgot how many batteries there are, a few dozen batteries, and I show the standard charging rate, what the manufacturers say is standard rate, the fast charge rate, and then a rate I recommend for, if you've got forever, here's what you can charge it at, try to extend the life of the battery. My rule of thumb is 1 amp is a good compromise between charging speed and damage to the battery, accelerated aging of the battery. Batteries hate heat. Even if you hold on to it, it's just a little bit warm, that battery is aging faster than it would if it was sitting at room temperature, around 45 Celsius. It demonstrably. That's a lot of syllables, and it's late. So you can start showing the cycle life, the number of times you can charge and discharge. It gets reduced if we're always doing it, let's say 2 amps. But something to consider is 2 amp charging in a 3 battery mod is only about 0.7 amps to the batteries. Why? Because that 2 amps gets effectively divided up between the 3 batteries. And I won't go into details why, but it doesn't end up 2 amp, 3 amp charging. 2 amp charging isn't 2 amps to the batteries unless you've got 2 amps going into one battery. If you've got 2 batteries, 2 amp charging is about 1 amp per battery. 3 batteries in series, it's about 0.7 amps per battery. So 3 amp charging, if it's 3 batteries, so you're fine. I don't know if any of them are 3 amp, like into a DNA 75C or something like that, where you have a single battery. 3 amps into that, that's accelerating the aging of that battery. It's going to get hot. I don't recommend that at all. Right. Most of them, I'd say 2 amps is as high as you go. For 15 amp and higher, I'd say check the charging table. There are the 10 amp batteries, the 5 amp ultra high capacity batteries, anything over 3,000 mAh cannot be rated over 10 amps. So these high capacity lower current batteries, that's great if you're vaping at 18 watts, but I don't recommend anything over half an amp. They just cannot absorb that without heating up very badly, because you got all the goop, you got a little tiny metal electrodes and everything. You just can't pump current in the same way you can't pull it out.
Right.
And it also takes time to get the diffuse through all that goop. We'll go into this in the video. So I haven't looked into, are we talking 1, 2, or 3 battery mods that are supporting this rapid charging? If it's a 1 battery device, yeah, I have issues with 3 amps. That's not good at all. But if it's a 2 or 3 battery device, not as much.
Okay. But basically, if you can control the charge and you have all the time in the world, if you want to extend your battery life as much as possible, charge at a lower amp rate.
Charge at a lower rate, yeah. Anything below half an amp will make no measurable difference to us. Frankly, I think anything below 1 amp makes no measurable difference to us because we're so abusive otherwise to our batteries. A 20 amp battery just doesn't get used above 10 amps anywhere else. The vaping community, a 20 amp battery, 20 amps is considering the starting point by a lot of vapors. So it's a very abusive use in so many different ways for the batteries we use. But that's why a lot of times when I pick 1 amp as sort of but if you charge at half an amp, it'll never hurt to go slower. If you want to charge at a 1/4 amp and come back Saturday before you start, you can do that. I just don't think you're going to see a difference in overall battery life.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines to.
Do you have another commercial break here, Dimi, before we open up the phone line?
I sure do. 215-383-5752. Go ahead and call in, and then I have some written questions from the chat as well too. Right after this.
Wish I could vape.
Go ahead.
I can't. Equipment's on. Yeah, I got to do something. Yeah, I'm not going to turn a $400 calibration into a
Go ahead.
calibration because I got 3G on the board. all the fans are pulling it on the gear. It's just, and especially now that it's right next to the door is 2 places across the room now.
All right, we are back. I'm going to pull a couple of questions from the chat, and like I said, the phone lines are open. I saw a couple of the calls drop. Be patient. You got Mooch to your discretion here for the next 30 minutes. Use them. First question, we just want to know if it's safe to use 𝗡𝗡 or MXJO.
That's a 4-hour question because what's most important is there is no safe use of these batteries. There's always a little bit of risk. Now, what happens is with these rewrappers like 𝗡𝗡 or MXJO, they can take good Samsung or Sony cells, but they might be a lower grade. They might be old. They might switch what battery they use right in the middle of their rewrapping cycles, and we won't know. That's the less than what could be safe part. So there's just no way to quantify safe or unsafe or something like that. You'll always be safer using a genuine Samsung or an LG or Panasonic Sanyo battery, but you might have a perfectly safe experience using 𝗡𝗡s and MXJOs. It's just another risk you take to pay twice the price for a battery. Now, in some countries, there are only rewraps available, and only like 3 or 4 of them, and the worst of the worst in some countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, the horrifying selections and just junk that they have there. Okay, I'm not going to go into a rant. I'm in the middle, EH Pro, in the middle of testing the batteries, and it's a nightmare.
Oh, EH Pro, that's the vaping battery that's not recommended for vaping, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The one they market to vapors and then say, never, ever use this in an electronic cigarette.
Good old China.
They're not the only company. You might be surprised. You might be surprised at the companies that are saying that. And I don't mind if a vendor does that, because I understand they're not targeting vapors slowly. They sell to flashlight people, everybody, and the standard CIA move, cover your butts. Hey, don't use this in an electronic cigarette. Don't sue us if you use this there. But when a battery wrapping company targets vapors and then says don't use for vaping, I think that's a different case. And I think that, no, you don't need to play both sides of the fence.
That's really pissing me off as well, too.
And if they say, hey, don't use it, then that's what I put on my test report. Don't buy this battery because the manufacturer says not to. And I don't know if there's a great way out of it, but you just can't blindly play both sides of the fence. No, we'll sell the vapors and then tell vapors they can't use it. For vendors, I understand. Not for the battery companies.
This question comes from Rufus Wolfson. It's a very good question. Actually, I had thought about bringing it up as well, too. Popularity of pods now. We have the Juul systems, the My Blues, My Von Earls, everything that is out there. Are pod-style systems or Ego batteries safer? Any safety precautions when it comes to these new pod systems that are hitting the market and the internal batteries?
We have to hope they're designed well. And a lot of that comes from making sure that it's a safer device as possible, is not to buy the latest device on the market. Let them get bought by a lot of people. Let them get used for a month, and then check online. Ask your groups, find out what's going on, talk to the shops, what kind of return rate is there, and stuff like that. We're putting our trust with the internal battery devices in the design of the companies that make these devices. Now, there's been a pretty good track record. Mm-hmm. Millions of these things have been sold, and there have been an astoundingly small number of situations. But things that you can do is not charging them underneath a blanket. Charge them out in the open so they don't overheat. Don't mash and slam the USB connection in. Go gently. You want that connection to last a long time. And the rest of it is don't accept or ignore weird behavior. If it starts acting freaky, if it overheats, if something sparks, if it fires on its own, what's called auto fires, stop using it. Don't just go, what was that, and keep going. We're not going to be able to figure it out, what's going on. Just stop using it and speak to the shop. Try to get the company if you can get a return, or whatever you can do. But use your own best judgment, too. Something's weird, don't use it. But in the end, like any device, we're at the mercy of the manufacturer.
Let me tell you,
John, I want to ask John a question. Would you like to see the industry move to the USB-C connection?
No, not
really?
Yet. Not yet.
That's really interesting. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's not especially robust. The reversibility is nice, because
Yeah.
that's a big part of what messes up a USB connection is
Exactly
people
right, yeah.
going like this and then going, oh, okay, because no matter what, I never get it right the first time. But I go in slow. You figure 50-50, half the time I get it right? No.
And wouldn't it be nice if they were all oriented exactly the same way? At least that would help a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
at least a standard with that.
Yeah.
But, depending if they mount the connector on the top or the bottom of the circuit board, you can get right side up or upside down.
Right.
Also, the faster charging, the PD standard, USB 3.1C PD or whatever, power delivery, where you can get up to 20 volts and 3 amps or something like that, 5 amps, can just vaporize the circuit board on a device if there's talking is not done correctly back and forth between the charger, actually it's inside the cable, and the device being charged. They do not have that fleshed out. And I hate to generalize here, but a lot of companies in China are going the inexpensive route and just saying, oh, we'll put a USB-C connector in there, and I'm not going to test it with 5,000 chargers and all that complicated power delivery communication protocol and stuff. It'll be fine. And it's not. Someone puts in a Samsung fast charger, the fast charger goes, oh, 20 volts? I'd be happy to send you 20 volts. And poof. Now, that's rare, but it's out there. And I think we've got enough problems without USB-C coming along now until these standards are fleshed out, until we know where we can get good cables from. Because if you've got 2 or 3 amps, what's the use if it drops 1 volt because you got some cheap cable? There's too many things we need to educate our community about. There's too many things that have to be worked out and stuff. Now, when you got Samsung and Apple and phones, that's worked out. There's standards. There are millions of people buying these. There's accountability. Somewhere there's a word in that. And you've got much higher standards that the stuff's being made to and designed to. For us, it's a bigger problem, and I don't want to see this until next year at the earliest. We just don't need that higher current. Now, it'd be nice to have a more robust connector,
right?
But I don't want USB-C, not yet.
And that's very interesting and very, very good information. I am going to switch over to the phone lines. Let's take our first call. This is from area 613, and you're on the air with Mooch, Phil, and Dimi. What's up?
Hi, I think it's me.
That is you. What is your name? Where are you calling from?
Ottawa.
Oh, all the way from Canada. What is up?
Yeah, I had a question about aging batteries.
Okay.
I got some old VPC5s, and they still put out like almost 2,000 when I charge it. I've got the charger tells you how much it put into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering, is that safe, or is there like chuck 'em age?
2,000 is it depends how far they get used down to, but that's certainly not an issue in its own. An important thing to look for is not necessarily the number itself, but is that number rapidly getting smaller and smaller? If let's say by summer, if you're down to 1,600 mAh going in every time you charge it, and you're using pretty well the same way every day, then that's an indication you're reaching the end of the life. If the batteries are getting warmer without changing the way you vape, that's an indication of reaching the end of the life. Otherwise, you're pretty well free to use them until they piss you off because the performance has dropped off so much. There's no set schedule for that, because so much of it's dependent on the way you are personally using the batteries that determine how long they last before the performance drops too far. Yeah. But with the charger that you have now, it's great to be able to say, hey, okay, I'm at 2,000 in March. If I'm at 2,000 in August, there's no reason to replace them if they're not getting warmer. But if you're at 1,600 mAh in this summer, then you start to go, you know what? These are starting to piss me off. I think it's time to buy a new set.
Great question, by the way. Yeah, thank you so much for calling in.
And John, when you said when you are as you're using the batteries and you notice them getting hotter as you're using them, that's a function of the internal resistance going up, right? I mean, that's the battery going bad on you.
Yeah. Think of a tiny 0.02 ohm coil inside our batteries. Literally, the resistance of the materials itself acts like a 0.02 ohm coil for an average high performance battery, a 0.1 coil for a low performance battery. And so just like in our coils, it heats up, and you can get an idea how much a battery can heat up inside in little points inside the battery by thinking, hey, what would happen with a 0.02 ohm coil here? That's what's going on inside the battery. That's what does all this damage. And I forgot your question.
Well, the question obviously was aging batteries. That's from the caller.
Oh, yeah, the heating itself. Now, a battery will get hot being used because of this internal resistance. They call it Joule heating, Joule. It'll go. I'll put that in the video. But it's just, passing current through a resistance makes heat. That's what our coils work. So that's not okay. We want to avoid it. But there'll be a certain level your batteries will heat to each time you use them. And if you're a consistent vapor, about the same temperature. You never want to vape till your batteries get hot. Anything above warm, just stop, slow down, do something different. Yeah. But if you are always, let's say you're always vaping at 60 watts, but now, 5 months later, you're like, these batteries, I don't remember getting this hot. That may be your batteries reaching the end of their life because the internal resistance of the battery goes up as the battery ages, which means it creates more heat as you use it.
Absolutely. Let me. Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
Do we have any devices out there? Because John, we've talked about this. We have chargers now that will measure the internal resistance of a battery. We have chargers. Yeah, I know. We have chargers that will measure the capacity of a battery, the amount of power that's going into the battery. Yeah, they do. Do we have any devices where we can put a battery on and it will give you a real amp rating? I kind of knew the answer to this. Or how about something that we could put a battery on and it'll say it's time to replace this battery?
No, because it wouldn't, unless you program into a device, you'd have to store the starting point for the battery,
right?
And then store what a percentage, but let's call it 40% loss. That's a 30 or 40% loss in capacity. That's a common number used by Samsung, Sony, the big manufacturers, to say you've reached the end of life. But it's up to you. You might say, I can lose 50% and I'm okay. But the manufacturers use 30, 40%, occasionally 20%. So you could certainly make a device, none exists, where you go, hey, here's my battery now, take a measurement, that's store battery 1. And
right.
Every time you use it, you say, yes, I'm still using battery 1, and it could beep at you when you were 30% down. But odds are you would be complaining way before that, going, damn it, I used to be able to go the whole day. Okay. Now I can only go like 6 hours before this thing fails.
Okay. So something like with what you're talking about is where you store the initial battery conditions, or maybe something with a built-in database is a database possibility too.
Or like a shop could have a new VTC5 and you bring yours in and you put both in the device and it says, hey, relative age, or percentage loss in performance, right, or something like that. A comparer. Right. A comparator kind of device on there, but that's easily done technically. And in fact, with the existing chargers now, it could measure the capacity, and it could come up and say store, and then as number 1, and you say yes, and then you always come back in, and at a certain point it could tell you, hey, you know what? If this is battery number 1, I have to maybe think about replacing it. You're down 30 or 40% or whatever the number is. Yep. It's an interesting feature. It'd be something to certainly see if vapors were interested in something like that.
Let me get another call here before we go to Geek Speak on everybody. And 757, you are on the air with Mooch, Phil, and Dimi. What's up?
Hey, how y'all doing? I have a quick question. It's probably an easy question.
Sure.
I squawk, and I guess moisture in between the battery and the wrap. So far, I haven't had an issue, but something's always on the back of my mind.
What was the issue? Juice under the wrap?
Is that what you said? Liquid underneath the wrap was the question?
Yeah, so liquid in between the wrap and the battery.
Yeah, that in itself isn't an issue. It's not good. It's currently be an indication that there might be liquid down in the device, which can be bad depending on the device. I always recommend rewrapping, just because it can absorb moisture, which can rust and corrode the battery, especially underneath the top ring insulator where you can't see the corrosion or rust, and that's never a good thing. So I always recommend, if it's there, to carefully unwrap the battery and rewrap it. If you're not comfortable with that, a shop usually can do it for a nominal fee. It's a shame to replace the battery just for that, but only because I don't know the condition of the battery, how bad the liquid leaky is and everything. I always have to err on the side of caution and say rewrap the battery.
Yeah, thank you. That was a very, very good question, especially with the popularity of squonking, by the way. I have to put that out there because I said this on the live show Monday with Vinny. I was at a vape shop, Mooch, and mechanical mods were brought up. And the guy said to me, I haven't carried mech mods in 2 years. And I look in his display cabinet, and he has 3 mechanical squonkers. And I said, "This is what I'm talking about here. I mean, you have to have some battery safety." But it's nice to see now that we're getting some regulated squonkers on the market with Tony B's and a couple other ones that are coming. I'm really, really excited, especially for people like me, the way that we vape, me and Phil. But the majority of squonkers that are out there are mechanical. These are, you have to take the same precautions as you would in a mechanical mod.
Right.
All right, let me get a question here from the chat. This is from Lewis. Now, will a mod have a recommended mod to use, whether one or more cell?
Not recommended mod. They will recommend a current rating, a CDR. Usually, China just goes 30, 35 amp, 40 amp. The batteries don't exist. There are no 35 or 40 amp 18650s in existence anywhere that we can buy. Military has things and stuff. But for capacity, no. But a higher capacity, the longer the batteries will run. Luckily, we have some fantastic 3,000 mAh batteries, HG2, the VTC6, and the 30Q, that have decent current ratings, running from 45 to 60 watts each, how you can run them at, and usually are the best option for a regulated device.
Yeah, and by the way, 215-383-5752. Well, we got about 20 more minutes on the phone lines. Please get your questions in. This is from Use808. Hi, guys. Accidentally hard shorted a couple of batteries in a serious mech. I wasn't paying attention. I soon realized when the mod got very hot, batteries seem to be okay charging and discharging. The question is it safe to still use, or is it best to have them checked or replaced?
We have no idea. Honestly, we can't possibly know. Since it's not safe inherently to use them in the first place, we go, how much more risk has the shorting added to them? And it fundamentally depends on how much current flowed during the short and how much damage was done. Those batteries are not the same as they were before, but have they been damaged to a point where they are now a much greater risk to you? I just don't know, and there's no way for me to say. We're going to have to err on the side of caution and say replace them. But if you say they're operating fine, they're not running hot, they have the same performance, then maybe nothing has happened to them and they survive just fine. But there's just no way for us to say.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I want to be able to say.
Yeah.
There's just nothing we can say.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to give a definite
because some
answer
short
there.
circuits make a battery explode. You're short of that, but where on the scale, we don't know.
Yeah, and in my opinion, whenever you're in doubt, the best thing is to replace. I mean, we're talking about $20 here for a couple of batteries. The most important, I think, aspect of vaping. So if you're in doubt, I would that's what I would say. I would suggest to replace them as well too.
Let me. Can I jump in here, Demi?
Oh, please.
Okay, so John, let me ask you this question. I think I know the answer, but let me go ahead and ask it anyway. So we have a lot of USB wall adapters, right? And they all come in different shapes. They come in different sizes. Some of them are Qualcomm rapid charge capable. Some of them are 1 amp, 2 amp, 3 amps. If you look at the little fine print on these things, you'll see that, right? But they all have that standard USB port on them. And then you have your cable that comes with your electronic cigarette, which is a standard USB to a micro USB, right? Would you not agree that I should be able to use any of these, right? It should not be. I shouldn't have to think about which of these I'm using. It should be the circuitry in here should be done correctly to prevent this from taking too much power.
Should is a wonderful word,
isn't it?
Unfortunately, it's not one we can apply here because it depends. If people go out and buy $2 charging blocks, I've bought some $2 charging blocks, 1 amp rated charging blocks, and they deliver 3.75 volts out of the 5 volts that they should. Once you get to the other end of the cheap little cable that came with the mod. That's preposterous. Your battery never gets charged, and it could be a safety issue depending how the mod, the device, what it does with this way too low a voltage going to it. So we should, but I'd like to see these manufacturers include a charging block. If I can buy one for $2, they cost 25 cents to make, and it's not hard to add another nickel to get a cable into this kit that will not drop 1 volt coming for it, so your batteries actually charge the 4.1, 4.2 volts, somewhere in that range. They charge quickly because the lower the voltage, the less current that it's pumping through there, and aren't a safety problem. If you say, hey, we're going to include a cable, and we're going to choose the mod, but good luck with getting a charger block, a lot of people are just going to go out and buy a $2 one. And I found this testing the 𝗲𝗡 X8 sticks. There was one of the blocks that was with the one that blew up, delivered this 3.75 volts. It's a 1 amp block. You think it'd be okay? It's only it's only half an amp being pulled through it for the mod I tested with, and it was down under 4 volts, which means you can't even charge your battery with it fully. So and things got hot. It's a big safety issue. It's a reliability issue. And it's a usability issue also, because your batteries aren't getting charged with these kind of voltage drops. Include the frickin' charger block with the device, with a decent cable. People will pay an extra 80 cents, an extra buck on top of it to have that peace of mind, because you buy this device. Okay, next question.
250, you're on the air with Mooch, Phil, and Dimi. What's up?
Hey, Mooch, Phil, Dimi, it's Bill here.
Hey, Bill.
Just had a question for Mooch, because I see a lot of people, and I've seen a few articles talking about, oh, well, I bought a charger and it blew up my batteries, but they're getting it from bargain stores. What would you suggest for people to look for when they're getting a charger? And is there any suggestions to seeing or some way to spot fake batteries or chargers?
For the chargers, no way to spot the fake ones. The fake batteries is an hours-long topic we can do. That's why, and the good fakes are so good that I couldn't describe them in hours, because it's that game we play. Every time you describe it, the next set of batteries won't have those characteristics, because the counterfeiters know that's what we're looking for. So that's why buying from known reliable vendors is the most important thing we can do. If you're worried about something you might have as a fake, you've bought it from someplace that's an issue here. And now you've got to go through all the extra work to try to find out if they're fakes or not. I can't do it by photographs. I get multiple times a day people sending me photos. Are these fake or not? And I go, I can't tell. Some of these, I need a 10-power loop to look at the tooling marks to say, oh, that's not the battery they claim. Now, for the fake chargers, again, buying from known reliable vendors, don't try to save a buck or two here or there. This is just safety we're talking about, and that charge is a 5-year investment. Spend the extra little bit of money to do that. Bill, the first part of your message was a 3-part. The first one, what was the first part?
Bill?
Did he leave? Okay, there was a part of the question that was the first part he had brought up. Getting a good charger block.
Yeah.
Right now, because I haven't gone out and tested them, and the problem is if you test a bunch, 3 weeks later, they're not available. There's a whole new bunch available. I say use the same charger block you use for a tablet or a cell phone. If you don't have a tablet or a cell phone, buy the charger for a tablet or cell phone, a name brand one. They're going to be good chargers. I use an iPad. I have a pair of iPad 2-amp charger blocks that I use. When they're being used at ½ amp or 1 amp, they run completely cool. They run at a solid 5 volts by the time they get to it, so the device knows what it needs to do. It's got the voltage to run properly, and the device won't pull more current than it's designed to pull. It'll pull what it needs. There's a little chip inside that says, oh, I need 1 amp. Yeah, you've got 2, but I'm just going to take 1. And so that's what I recommend. It's just part of that peace of mind. Now, it's a pain in the ass when you have to go out and buy a $23 charger block because you don't have a cell phone or a tablet. But if you do, use that with a good cable for your device.
And that answered another question that was in the chat as well, too. But let me bring up this question for you, Mooch. Is it... I almost lost it right here. Okay. Is a cheap Chinese external charger any safer than a quality mod onboard charging?
It's completely up to that charger. I'd say they're both just as dangerous because it's up to that particular manufacturer. Some of the manufacturers make inexpensive chargers that aren't too bad. Some of them make disasters, nightmares in terms of safety. There's no way to quantify it. I can't say, oh, this one will always be better than that. It depends on each individual product. The range of good to bad is big for both. There's some devices that have terrible charger circuits that run hot as holy hell, and other ones that have fantastic internal charging boards. And then the external blocks that are absolutely fantastic from China, adequate, I should say. They're nothing like an Apple charger block or something. And then, which you can say, oh, it's made in China or wherever it's made. Yeah, but it's designed and approved by Apple and tested by every regulatory agency on the planet.
Correct. Very
Very different than a cheap piece of junk out of China that just says it was tested by every regulatory agency in the planet. It's just hard to quantify and make a recommendation.
It really is. And, I'm a big DNA fan. You know that as well, too. But I usually use single battery mods. So I have no problem carrying away DNA mods with one battery inside and charge because I travel a lot like Phil, and I don't like to carry a lot of battery spares with me. So actually, I never carry batteries when I fly, just whatever's in my device. So I just plug it in and just use the onboard charging. 915, you're on the air with Mooch, Phil, and Dimi. What's up? Hello, can you turn down your radio, please?
Yes, my question is, what about vaping while charging? This is Pablo, and thank you for the show.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Thanks for the question. Vaping while charging, I think that's just something that we see a lot of people. It's something that companies use as a marketing tool as well, too.
Yeah, and it's up to the device. Some devices you can't do that. Some devices will turn off the circuit to the coil while it's charging, and then you can't. Now, if you can, well, I'd say you can take advantage of that. You're using it 50 times faster than you're charging it, so it may not make much sense unless you've got a lot of time with it putting back down on the desk. 5 minutes between every pull or something. That might get enough current in there to make up for the pull you took. It can not be worth the additional stress and strain that you're putting on the connector if you're moving it around trying to do that. But if the device says you can do it, I have to think the manufacturer hopefully knows what they're talking about, and you can go ahead and do it.
Yeah. One of the things that actually bugs me is when you look in the manual and it says, do not use this device while charging, yet it allows you to do that. That bugs me.
And that's just a bad design because there's safety issues there. Obviously, otherwise I wouldn't tell you to do that. Probably overheating. And it just means, whoa, we didn't want to spend that 5 cents to prevent this, so we're going to put the onus on the user and hope somehow this person reads the manual, which isn't going to happen.
Right.
I saw this question in chat, and I want to pull it out because I think it's a very interesting one and very diverse. I work in construction, and I'm outside all day. How do I keep my battery safe?
If a spare battery in the hard plastic containers that you get free often, those I recommend because 2 batteries inside that, if it gets really hot, here we go. Let me not pull my, okay, something like this. And what's nice is, maybe it could pop open or something if you're torquing it or pressing it, but you can practically stand on it edgewise, and here you're not crushing the batteries, and it's a tremendous amount of force. Keeps out the dust, most of the water. Fantastic, and they're dirt cheap if you just get an extra 10 or something. But nowadays, pretty well in where you buy from, you're going to get this with every 2 batteries that you order. I recommend that. Now, the silicone sleeves, the stretchy sleeves, the condoms are sometimes called, I don't recommend those as much for like a work situation because the dust, fluids, and stuff can still get on the battery, even though the battery is protected from drops and stuff like that. I don't recommend those as much. I recommend a hard case.
Question from Arindam. I hope I said that name correctly. My Pico 25 can charge at 2 amp. Can I charge with turbocharger? Someone told me the system will balance out at 2 amps.
If your charger can provide 2 amps at 5 volts, then the chip inside will accept it. Now, it all depends on how that charger negotiates with it. There's communications back and forth if they're doing it properly. Or actually, the device will probably not communicate at all, and the charger will go, oh, well, if you're not talking to me, I'm just going to give you 5 volts. But some of those charges, if the device doesn't talk back to it, will go, oh, I'm only going to give you half an amp, or even 100 milliamps, 0.1 amp. It's really up to excuse me, how they talk to each other. And this is part of the problem. These standards aren't all worked out yet in terms of what China will do with these devices, what's called dumb devices for fast charging. But it's up to the device. Each manufacturer will be different. That is a question literally for the manufacturer of the device or the vendor for the device, and hopefully one of them knows how it'll work with a fast charger or a rapid charger device.
By the way,
charger.
The bonus shot of Phil's leg is free today, but from now on, he's going to start charging for pay-per-view. 256, you are on the air with Mooch, Phil, and Demi. You got a question?
Yeah, my expertise would be in charging systems. For a long time at a company in Alabama that we have a production facility, and we're working on developing some charging systems. And I vape, and we're doing some stuff specifically for vapor products. I want to get some input, maybe from Mooch or Phil about maybe like a flyback system specifically with transformer-based charging that could be very cost-effective. What's your thoughts about that, transformer-based over switch mode-based? You know what I mean? What would be sort of some benefits for that while we're developing this product that we, trying to get a cost-effective, low cost magnetics industry-based product that's based on transformers and, fly back over switch mode?
It's going to be pretty technical for a new viewer thing. You can contact me at batterymooch@yahoo.com. We can go into a little further, but a quick thing is transformers are expensive as hell. 4056 charge management chips and the MCO1 or the something CO1 are dirt cheap. And doing a linear method off of 5 volt may be much less expensive, but we could probably talk in more detail a little bit and discuss any kind of formal relationship or something like that if you want to go into more detail.
By the way, I'm Greek, and that was all Greek to me. I just want to put that out there. I have a question, because a lot of vendors are watching as well, too. Hexo, I might be not saying this right, Ohm Life batteries, right? Which I'm assuming they're a rewrap, correct?
I haven't heard of them.
The ones that are being sold here in the United States with liability insurance that you actually get.
Home Tech.
Oh, Home Tech. I'm sorry. Yeah, see, I brutally murdered it. But Home Tech batteries are starting to get a lot of popularity. The vendors are tired of these lawsuits are piling up, one after the other. So what is your advice on that battery? And do you hope or do you know we're going to see more batteries that are going to start taking some liability off the back of some of these small vape shops?
Well, make sure you look at the terms of the liability insurance. PLI, product liability insurance, benefits the manufacturer, the wrapper of the battery, namely Home Tech. If that coverage does not extend to the shop, then it offers no benefit to the shop. It doesn't extend to the end user. Now, if it does extend to the shop, that's fine. But also take a look at what is the warranty? What are the terms and conditions of the sales? Are these batteries approved for vaping? Contact Home Tech. Ask them, do you approve these batteries for vaping, and will your insurance cover my shop if someone sues me for that? Don't automatically assume because the company is covered, because that's standard. Every company is going to cover themselves with product liability insurance. That can be sued. The companies in China don't have to worry, but an American-based firm, all of them hopefully have liability insurance. So ask Home Tech. Find out the specifics and get your attorney to ask Home Tech and for a formal statement as to whether does it extend to your shop if a Home Tech battery injures somebody being sold by that shop and that shop is named in the suit, or is a shop on its own.
I think a lot of these shop owners are just blindly hearing, because they're afraid, obviously, as you should be. I know shops that have 5-6 battery lawsuits, so a lot of them are afraid. And they're like, they hear the term insurance, they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to carry these batteries and nothing else, and this covers us all. But I'm glad to hear that you bring it up.
The details are important. The tiniest little word here or there, and even if the insurance extends to a shop, does it extend to vaping use to that shop for those batteries? Namely, are those batteries specifically approved for vaping by Home Tech, or are they a general purpose battery that's just being marketed to vapor, but then they say, don't use an electronic cigarette? You have to check the fine print on the website and have your attorney contact Home Tech and their attorneys discuss anything formally.
Here's a question from a viewer in Egypt. So I think it's morning in Egypt, so good morning in Egypt. In Egypt, at summer, the temperature reaches 40, almost 50 degrees Celsius, which is very, very hot. So is it safe for a battery? I mean, heat is a concern with these batteries and stressing them at those levels.
Not safe. Again, it's never safe, period. But does it add extra risk? It's aging the battery faster, and it lowers the threshold in which you can have a problem. Like, let's say you overheat a battery using it in mech or something like that. Well, if it already starts at 50 C, it's easier to get to a problem area. But let's say you're just using them relatively gently, you're not heating them up. Those kind of temperatures will accelerate the aging of the battery, and I recommend you certainly keep it out of the sun and just not letting them get hot. No heat, no cold, as much as you can, and just understand that, well, I'm just using them. They're in my pocket. It's 50 degrees C for months, the better part of the year, and just realize, well, okay, that's aging it. But certainly if you're using them hard and you're abusing them, you're reducing your safety margin by already starting at a higher temperature.
Let me pull this stuff online before we lose the telephones. 570, you're on the air with Mooch, Phil, and Dimmy. 570, can you hear us?
Yes. I just had a question about wrapping batteries
Sure.
and replacing the insulator on them.
Sure, go ahead.
Is there going to be a difference between using like a cardboard or a plastic material?
Well, the cardboard ones can soak up e-liquid, which could be an issue because they can swell, they can gather moisture, and that can corrode underneath. I prefer to see plastic ones, but the cardboard ones are pretty common. They're used on a couple of batteries now, but almost all of them have switched to plastic. Certainly, if you can, use plastic. Otherwise, if the cardboard's fairly thick and you keep the liquid off of them, there's really no inherent reason why they can't be used.
Yeah, there you go. And I'm going to tell you something, Phil. Even I learned something today, and I think that's really, really important. Every time that you can go through and learn, even for us, I've been vaping for so long, something new, I think it's very, very, very impressive. 949, let's take another question. 949, you're on the air with Mooch, Phil, and Dimi.
What's up, Mooch?
Yo.
What's up? We can hear
Mooch.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Phil, did you hear about Boba's bounty?
I did. I heard about it. I've had at least 20 emails come my way about that. I'm not much of a tobacco vapor anymore, but I'm thinking about picking up a bottle just for nostalgia's sake. I have a bottle sitting in Rochester. I have a bottle sitting in Rochester that's been steeping for 3 years now, and I probably don't want to vape that anymore, but I'm thinking about getting a new bottle, yeah.
That's a cologne now.
All right. Hey, I can't hear you guys too well, so I'll leave you with that. And thanks for the show. Have a good night, guys.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
calling in. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I have a question for Mooch.
Yeah.
Yo.
All right, so here's my question for Mooch. I'm actually charging a device behind me right now, and I got a new little toy to measure the amount of current going into the device. I've had one of those before, but this one actually talks to the PC, so I can graph it.
Okay.
When I get down, when the device is done charging, okay, but I still see 0.1 or 0.2 amps continuing to go into the device. Is that something to be concerned about?
I don't know. Some of them, it all depends on how accurate what your reading actually is. Some of these, little meters and stuff, once they get down to a certain level, they can't read 0. They'll always read 0.1 or something like that. So we don't know is that actually current or not. Now, when there is what they call quiescent or background current draw by the device, but that's an extraordinary high level, hundreds of milliamps. And it's got to go somewhere. Hopefully that's not into the battery, because batteries hate being continuously charged like that. I don't know. I don't know if it's just an artifact of a inaccurate reading or a reading that can't bottom out truly all the way, or if the mod is actually drawing that value. But certainly if you feel it even a little bit warm, half hour later or something, that means it's probably flowing through the battery and the device is never really turning off. Charge.
Got a couple more questions, and I got to give props, Phil. Mooch has been standing for the last 2 hours doing the show. That's really, really impressive.
Did you want me to stand with him?
Yeah, you should. No, please sit back down.
My legs.
Nobody wants to see that. This is from Andrew Stewart. Mooch, I replaced the 18650s in my mechs when they dropped to 3.7. And recharge, is this okay in terms of the longevity of the battery?
I'm sorry, what was the question part of that?
So the question is it okay for him to recharge his 18650s when they drop down to 3.7 for the longevity of the battery?
Yeah, you can go to 2.5 volts if they're rated for. Most people, 3.7 volts is probably around 3.3, 3.2, somewhere in that range when you're taking a pull, and then it snaps back up to its true voltage, 3.7. That's zero problem. That you can go a lot further if you want to. Further down in voltage, but there's zero problems if you're not overheating the battery, blah, blah, blah.
Fantastic. And I think I know the answer to this one, but would Mooch consider doing regular live show? I looked on your YouTube, and you do regular. I mean, I don't know if you have a set time, but you do.
Bi-weekly. Other, opposite Tuesdays of you guys, every other Tuesday. So next Tuesday, I do my weekly Q&A, 1 hour, which pretty well wears everybody out.
Yeah.
Because I just do rapid fire. I might get to 100 questions or something, and just bang through as many as I can get every other week. I'm trying to take some of the heat off the couple hundred written questions I get every day, because 90% of them are the same 5 questions that all can be answered by just looking at my tables or checking out my videos or something like that.
What is it about vaping that everybody wants immediate satisfaction? Nobody wants to put in the work to do it. I mean,
what is it about human nature?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it is. I remember when I was reviewing products, and I do a review on the 𝗘𝗡𝗡, for example, and then 2 days later I get, hey Dimitri, private man, what do you think about the 𝗘𝗡𝗡? I'm like, what? This is a review 2 days ago. Go watch the 𝗘𝗡𝗡. I said, what's going on? But
Dimitri, what do you think of Nick Salt's?
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, that's another one. I'll tell you what. I'm glad I loaded some in this little Joytech because I needed it at the beginning of the show to make sure that we get this thing broadcasting.
I'm going to take a nice. Because I was told you guys, but for everyone who's listening, I can't vape in this room because of the equipment I have running, the pulls and fans, and I'm not coating anything with VG. So, I'm going to have to work something out. I'm not sure what. Schedule my testing around these, I guess, and just stop testing. But these are 8+ hour tests, and there's just no chance to do that. But I'm stepping outside immediately with some very nice Paradigm fruit medley and a machina and enjoying a nice vape to... before I get ready for dinner.
This conversation was brought up Monday in this other live show that I do in the UK, and we were talking about vaping in hospitals, and one of the things that I did bring up as well too is that, hey, people continue to vape around this very, equipment that's very sensitive in these hospitals that could create an issue. And it's nice to see that you're taking that stance with equipment that you're using for your testing as well too.
And I have to, because I mentioned earlier, I send this stuff out for calibration every couple of years, and I'm not going to pay a fortune to have all the dust that sticks to the VG being pulled in through these things. To pay on top of that, on top of the calibration, and things overheat. It's just not worth it for me, and it's my own decision to be that careful. But I don't vape much inside because I bounce between flavors. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to step outside, come back in, and smell the morning's raspberry when I'm in the mood for a custard tart.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So I usually step out. I have a first floor apartment, so it's easy for me to step outside. It's a break. I was a stress smoker, so I'm primarily a stress vapor now, except when I get a new liquid, and then I'm just sucking it down for a few days before I go. I put it back in rotation. So for me, it's the stepping outside, the mechanical action of vaping. And all, and so I haven't vaped a lot indoors anyway because I don't get that break from the stress that's making me want to vape and maybe want to smoke. So I don't do it a lot. But even now, the equipment, I don't care what the weather is outside. No, absolutely not. And unfortunately, with the new test station here for vaping stuff and the other test station for client stuff, both rooms have equipment running. So there are things for me to work out because I'd like the option maybe to vape inside if I want to someday. But right now,
fantastic. Just a couple of brief questions because I find them really interesting. No, you're fine. And I think this is overtime anyway. But we started a little bit late, so let's just give the opportunity for a couple of people. This is from David Leister. This is a very interesting question. Has anyone ever tested if a certain kind of wire, for example, with all these new builds that are coming out, Clapton or Fused Clapton or Dinoceras, whatever, all these flat wires, is either one of them? Has anybody tested if it's harder on battery life?
It doesn't matter. Resistance is resistance.
Based on the resistance.
It doesn't matter if you have a 5,000-mile piece of steel at 0.2 ohms or you've got a hogfoot Warts wad, coil at 0.2 ohms. The current is exactly the same. By definition, it is exactly the same. What is different is the ramp-up time and the amount of time you use that current and how the current might change as the coil heats up. But 0.2 ohms is 0.2 ohms no matter what it's going through, or resistance.
Yeah.
The material is irrelevant. It's only the resistance of the material and what its TCR, temperature coefficient of resistance. How the resistance changes as it heats up, like stainless steel. Resistance goes up noticeably as you use it.
Last question that I see here: is there any advantage of cycling a Lion with a capable charger like there is with the other chemistries like NiCad or NIMH?
None at all. None at all. You're just wasting one of the limited cycles with lithium ion. There's no memory effect with lithium ion. There's no benefit to it. The only time it might be a benefit is if you want to measure the performance of the battery a year down the road and find out how much the battery is aged. Otherwise, you don't need to charge them up. You don't need to cycle all the way through them to try to recover them or anything like that.
This is just the last question for me, and unless Phil has anything else. I mean, I think everybody wants to know, like, what is your preferred way of vaping? I mean, what is one of, let's say, your top setups that you enjoy using?
No top setups. I get tired constantly. I love change.
Yeah,
I might go
obviously,
through,
I can tell that.
Yeah, on a heavy vaping day, I could go through 5-7 different mods, 4 different juices. Otherwise, I'm never vaping the same juice 2 days in a row. I'll go from I'm not going to tell you what resistance I use in a mech up to twisted single coil twisted 28 at 28 watts on a little mini volt with a Nobunaga Mini, and use that. I still use an Inikin T18S, but also go to a series mech or something like that, or I'll go to a Minikin V2 at 125 watts with a wonderful multi-layer flavor custard that I can run at 75 watts, then run at 110 and get different flavors within the same vaping session or something like that. I could rarely go through 2 dripperfuls of liquid before I'm like, I need something different. I've given up on sub-ohm because I can't make it through a tank before I'm tired of the flavor. So it's that change, it's that variety. It's something that I relish and love the opportunity to be able to do, as opposed to settling for a flavor and just going through that. So there's I'll probably move some of this stuff out if I have room somewhere into the test station, just so I can show off some of the mods or something. But I'll just all kinds of stuff here. I mean, like the pulse, I'll use down at a low level, but then I'll at the Machina with a an unnamed resistance coil and VTC 5A.
Let me pull this last one. Is it possible to use magnets to extend a 2650 into a 2700?
It depends on the magnet. You want to make sure it can't shift off to the side and short circuit anything, something like that. You could. You're gonna get a voltage drop across the magnet. Technically, it can be done. It's really how well it's implemented and how keeping the magnet centered and stuff like that.
Don't do it.
Just buy a 2700 battery.
Well, yeah, that's the best.
George says
2650 mod.
Uzo go excellent with vaping. Dimitri, you have to try it. You do know I'm Greek. I drink so much. I drink so much Uzo that it comes out of my eyeballs when I go to Greece every summer. I love Uzo. All right, so I think we've covered everything. I think it was.
Wait. I want to add one more question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know I am guilty of this, John. I am guilty of coming to you over and over and over again and say, okay, at this point in history, what battery is going to give me the most amps? At this point in history, what battery is going to give me the most capacity, right? I'm guilty of that, right? What is the question that you get most that you've probably answered over and over and over and over again?
The slight variations on what's the best battery.
Yeah.
Either I get that straight out, what's the best battery, or what's the best battery for regulated, for unregulated, for series, for stacked, for parallel, what's the best battery for blah. Right. And I understand they just want that. And that's why I have the recommended batteries table, just to kind of narrow it down. I say, look at this, get anything that's there with a high enough current rating.
All right, and I'm gonna get that information from you. I'm gonna make sure that information is in the information that we put out on Taste Your Juice. After this show, we're gonna make sure that people can go and see that without coming to you and asking you over and over and over again. And maybe even I'll use it.
I do want to say
what am I going to do if I don't get your 5 calls a day?
I do want to say that it's very important that on the Taste Your Juice post that Phil makes, not only do we have the replay, we have some show notes, and we also include the slides of every episode. You can go back and refer to it as well, too. Just another little touch that we're trying to get people more educated. I want to say thank you for all the good comments inside the chat, the wonderful comments and sharing and liking this video. There have been so many good comments about you being here tonight, Mooch, and answering all these questions. And we can't thank you enough, because I learned something today, and I think that I'm going to cherish for a while. And I'm able to pass that information as well to others. I think it's very important. So I just, one more time, want to reiterate to everybody that's listening, as a vapor, take this information and share proper information with your groups, your friends, your buddies, your little vaping group in your town. And don't just listen to anybody on Facebook that tells you, oh, yeah, that's fine. Of course you can use this Trustfire battery, with this
with a
0.05 coil,
all the time.
Don't do it. It really is not worth it. But
you can't even see the scars.
Yeah, there are 3 words that you should not be afraid of, and those words are I don't know. There's nothing wrong with those words, because there's a lot of stuff that I don't know. Even to this day, I'm still learning. And what do? I go to the best resources that I know.
None of us knew any of this when we started.
Right. So, I mean, for battery stuff, I go to Mooch. And if I have sex questions, I definitely do not go to Dimitri.
Well, you never have sex questions because you never have sex anyway, so it doesn't really make a difference.
Don't do it.
But anyway, I did get a question on where we can find all your charts and all that, so I'm going to put this slide up one more time.
Yeah, and the slides that I showed, number 7 has all the addresses, so it's in there too.
Absolutely, and all that will be in the
there
replay.
It is. There's everything.
Yeah, and everything that you see over there, all his charts, everything he's done on batteries on his blog, Facebook, Reddit, you can find all the information there. And of course, subscribe to his channel.
It's Mooch 315 or battery Mooch. It changes. Sorry, but depending where you are, on my slides it'll tell you, which is Mooch 315, which is battery Mooch and stuff. But right there, you've got the links directly. And
one more question.
Shoot.
Is it Mooch just because it sounds like your last name? Where did Mooch come from?
Mooch is one syllable from a spectacularly horrifying grade school nickname that happens to rhyme with something else. And so I pulled Mooch. I pulled Mooch out of the nickname as sort of my act of defiance against all the teasing I got being, a bookworm in grade school. Which is brutal.
What a great way to end the show.
We can make that for a trivia question for a contest maybe in the future. Yeah, that's great. That's
guys,
really
thanks for the invite too, and I really appreciate the chance to discuss things and answer some questions and spread the word.
I appreciate it. Phil, some final words from you?
I have nothing. I think it's been a fantastic show. I think it's been packed with information. All of that information is going to be up on Taster Juice with the replay. I can't thank John enough for coming on the show and spending his evening with us. It's terrific, and thank you so much, John.
Thank you, guys.
I do want to make sure everybody that's watching this video, either now on the replay, please go subscribe to his channel, Mooch's channel. Just tons and tons of information, and even I go on there when he puts on his new episodes, even for me to refresh.
And the intro, for the newer Vapors, the newer Vapor series will start in a couple of days as soon as I take this down and do that. And that'll probably be a video a week or so for the newer Vapors, and then I'll get into some much more technical stuff for the more advanced Vapors too. I'll continue doing that with the other series.
Fantastic.
And by the way, I do appreciate, because actually John is the only person that has access to tasterjuice.com to put content up there, and I really, really do appreciate you for doing that over the.
I got plans for that now that I've lulled you into a sense of security too.
Don't tell him everything, Mooch. By the way, I was offered access to that. And I was like, do I really need another headache to go that? So like, I don't have enough. I'm like, no, I don't want that at all.
Yeah, and it's not too many bugs in it. All the little quirkiness things you got to work around to go. Oh, that button says this, but it really does that. Okay.
And I hate WordPress. I mean, I'm a Squarespace fanatic, and I just cannot stand Squarespace. So, but anyway, thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in, and we will be back in 2 weeks with the Smoker Show. Next Tuesday, Smoke Free Radio, we have another Canadian episode. We're having some people from Canada on as guests. Back to advocacy for next Tuesday. Thanks to our sponsors, of course. 5 Pond Signature Vapor e-liquid out of California. OGs in the game. Joytech, of course, and Iniken. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.